lovely.
Hi.
Welcome to America's Got Talent.
When Courtney Hadwin first stepped onto the stage of America's Got Talent in 2018, no one expected what would happen next. The shy teenager from a small town in England could barely speak from nerves. But the moment the music began, she transformed. Her voice exploded with the raw power of Janis Joplin, electrifying the crowd and leaving even Simon Cowell speechless. Overnight, Courtney became a global sensation, the kind of once-in-a-generation talent that reminded the world what true artistry looks like. But fame, especially for someone so young, can be both a blessing and a burden. Behind the applause and flashing lights, Courtney's journey was far from easy. The girl who had once been celebrated for her fearless voice found herself facing challenges she never saw coming. The pressure, the criticism, and the endless expectations began to weigh heavily on her shoulders. And now heartbreaking news has left fans around the world deeply concerned. Those close to her say Courtney tried to stay strong through it all. The long nights, the emotional exhaustion, and the toll that fame can take on a fragile soul. The world saw the star, but few saw the struggle behind the smile. As the truth comes to light, one thing becomes clear. Courtney Hadwin's story isn't just about success. It's about the painful reality of chasing dreams in a world that can be both beautiful and brutal. When Courtney Hadwin first appeared on America's Got Talent, she looked like any other nervous teenager chasing a dream. Her long brown hair fell across her face, her hands trembled as she clutched the microphone, and her voice quivered as she told the judges she would be singing Hard to Handle by Otis Redding. Few expected much. She was just a shy 15-year-old from County Durham, England, standing in front of millions. But the moment the music began, everything changed. The timid girl vanished, replaced by a force of nature. Courtney's voice exploded through the theater, gritty, soulful, and filled with the fire of someone far older than her years. Her movements were wild, electric, almost uncontrollable, as if every note carried a lifetime of emotion. The judges' jaws dropped. The audience erupted. Simon Cowell's face lit up with a rare expression of pure shock. When Howie Mandel slammed the golden buzzer, showering Courtney in a storm of glittering gold, a star was born. Overnight, she became a viral sensation. Millions around the world watched her performance on YouTube, mesmerized by the contrast between her quiet, nervous demeanor and her explosive stage presence. People compared her to Janis Joplin, Tina Turner, and Amy Winehouse, legends whose voices carried the weight of truth and pain. But behind that powerful voice was still just a young girl trying to make sense of the sudden whirlwind her life had become. Courtney went from small stages in the UK to the biggest show in America, from performing in school talent shows to global interviews and flashing cameras. The attention was overwhelming. She was still in school, still discovering who she was, yet the world was already demanding she be a superstar. While America's Got Talent opened doors for her, it also brought pressures few could imagine. Fans expected perfection, producers wanted control, and the media wanted a story. Every word she spoke was dissected, every performance compared to her last. And though she tried to smile through it all, those close to her noticed the exhaustion creeping in. She was still just a teenager, and fame doesn't always wait for you to grow up. As the season went on, Courtney continued to impress with every performance. Her renditions of Papa's Got a Brand New Bag and River Deep Mountain High cemented her reputation as a powerhouse performer. Even when she didn't win the final competition, she won something more meaningful, the hearts of millions who believed she was destined for greatness. Yet after the show ended, something changed. The constant buzz around her began to fade, and so did her public appearances. The once constant stream of social media updates slowed down. Rumors began to swirl. Was she working on new music, or was something wrong? Behind the scenes, Courtney was struggling with the immense pressure that comes after sudden fame. While everyone expected her next big move, she was learning to cope with the realities of growing up under a spotlight. The very thing that had given her wings, her voice, was also the thing that now weighed her down. In interviews later, she would admit that she wasn't ready for what came after AGT. The spotlight had given her recognition, but it had also stolen her sense of normalcy. The bright lights that once represented her dream had become a reminder of how fragile success can be. Courtney Hadwin's rise to fame was nothing short of magical. But as she would soon discover, the higher you climb, the lonelier the view can become. In the months after America's Got Talent, Courtney Hadwin's life changed beyond recognition. One day she was an ordinary teenager in County Durham, and the next she was performing on international stages and appearing on talk shows watched by millions. The same people who once barely noticed her were now calling her the next Janis Joplin. On the surface, it seemed like a dream come true. But for Courtney, it was a dream that came with an emotional cost she could never have predicted. The pressure of instant fame began to build. Every label wanted to sign her, every journalist wanted an interview, and every fan wanted her next song. For a 15-year-old, it was overwhelming. The girl who once sang in her bedroom for fun was now expected to live up to impossible expectations. Everyone had an opinion on her voice, her clothes, her attitude, and none of it left room for her to simply be a teenager. Courtney's unique style, the very thing that made her special, also made her a target. Some called her performances too wild. Others criticized her for not smiling enough or for not being pop enough to fit into the mainstream. Online comments that started as praise began to shift into judgment. The same people who built her up now wanted to tear her down. She tried to ignore it, to focus on the music. But when you're young and reading the world's opinions about yourself, it cuts deep. Behind the scenes, Courtney struggled to find her footing in an industry that can be brutally unkind to young talent. Record labels wanted her to sound a certain way, look a certain way, and act a certain way. But Courtney was never meant to be molded. Her magic came from her authenticity. She didn't want to chase trends or fame. She just wanted to sing. But the industry's demands were relentless. Those close to her began to notice the toll. She became quieter, more withdrawn, as if the spark that once lit up her performances was dimming under the pressure. She tried to stay strong for her family, her fans, and her dream, but the weight of it all became harder to carry. The world saw her confidence on stage, but few saw the moments of doubt when the lights went out, the late nights spent wondering if she was truly good enough, if she could ever live up to what people expected of her. There were moments when Courtney seemed ready to walk away altogether. The fame that once felt exciting began to feel suffocating. It's a struggle that many young stars face but rarely talk about. The sudden shift from anonymity to constant exposure, from freedom to being defined by headlines and numbers, and yet, through it all, Courtney refused to let go of her dream. She poured herself into songwriting, channeling the confusion, fear, and pressure into her art. Her music became her therapy, her way of processing the chaos around her. She began to write songs not about fame, but about strength, identity, and holding on to yourself when the world wants to pull you apart. It was during this period of silence that fans began to worry. Updates were rare, performances few, and Courtney's absence left many wondering what had happened. But in truth, she was doing something most young stars never get the chance to do. She was taking time to heal, to grow, to find her voice again, not as a viral sensation, but as an artist in control of her own story. The price of the spotlight had been high. But as the world would soon learn, Courtney Hadwin's greatest strength wasn't her voice. It was her resilience. When the cameras stopped rolling and the buzz of America's Got Talent finally faded, Courtney Hadwin found herself standing in silence, a kind of silence she hadn't felt in years. The noise of fame had been deafening, and when it finally went quiet, she realized how much of herself she had lost in the chaos. The girl who once sang barefoot in her room, lost in the music, had been buried under layers of expectations, opinions, and fear. It was time to find her way back. Courtney disappeared from the spotlight for a while, and rumors began to swirl. Some thought she'd quit music. Others said she was struggling. The truth was simpler, but deeper. She was trying to figure out who she really was, outside of the image that the world had created for her. Fame had happened so suddenly that she never had time to ask herself what she wanted. During those quiet months, she went back to her roots. She spent long hours writing songs that no one would hear, experimenting with sounds that made her heart feel alive again. She rediscovered old records: Janis Joplin, Stevie Nicks, Tina Turner, the artists who had inspired her in the first place. She didn't want to imitate them anymore. She wanted to understand what gave them that rare, unbreakable fire. Music had always been Courtney's escape, but now it became her anchor. She began performing small gigs again, not on giant stages or in front of millions, but in intimate spaces where she could look people in the eye and feel the connection. There were no flashing lights, no cameras, no pressure, just her voice, and the truth. And for the first time in a long time, she felt free. Still, the journey wasn't easy. There were nights when self-doubt crept in, whispering that maybe she'd peaked too early, that maybe people had moved on. But Courtney was never one to surrender easily. She reminded herself that music wasn't about fame, it was about expression, emotion, and survival. She wasn't chasing stardom anymore. She was chasing peace. Her family stood by her side through it all. They had watched her rise, and they had seen her fall. They knew the weight she carried, the expectation to be the next big thing, when all she wanted was to be herself. Her parents encouraged her to slow down, to breathe, to create without pressure. And slowly, Courtney began to rebuild, not the fame, but her spirit. When she finally re-emerged online, fans were shocked. The Courtney they saw wasn't the nervous teen from AGT. She was more confident, more grounded, and more in control than ever before. Her voice had deepened, her lyrics had matured, and her performances carried a raw honesty that only comes from real pain and growth. She spoke openly about how difficult it had been to navigate fame at such a young age. She didn't blame anyone. She just wanted to share her truth. "When you're young, everyone tells you who you should be," she once said in an interview. "But no one asks who you want to be." Those words resonated deeply with her fans, especially those who had watched her journey from the very beginning. Courtney's music began to reflect that newfound strength. The songs weren't about heartbreak or fame. They were about healing. About breaking free from expectations and learning to love yourself, even when the world tries to shape you into something else. Every lyric felt like a piece of her soul, every performance like a quiet victory. In a way, her time away had been a blessing in disguise. The girl who once trembled under the bright lights had returned as a woman who controlled her own stage. She no longer needed validation from judges or headlines. She was making music for the people who truly listened, and for herself. Her comeback wasn't loud or flashy. It was quiet, soulful, and real. And for Courtney Hadwin, that was enough. Today, Courtney Hadwin stands as a symbol of resilience, a reminder that fame can be fleeting, but authenticity lasts forever. The little girl who once trembled before the America's Got Talent judges has transformed into a confident young woman, deeply aware of who she is and what she wants from life. Her journey has not been easy, but it has been real, and that's what makes it powerful. In the years since her whirlwind rise to fame, Courtney has carefully built her career on her own terms. She's no longer chasing viral moments or chart placements. She's creating art that reflects her truth. Her music today is raw and deeply emotional, blending rock, soul, and blues in a way that feels both nostalgic and entirely her own. It's not about sounding perfect. It's about feeling something, fans who've followed her since AGT often comment on how her performances seem more grounded. Now, less like a teenager trying to prove herself, and more like an artist who's finally comfortable in her own skin. Her voice carries a new kind of depth, one forged by the challenges she's faced. There's strength in every note, vulnerability in every lyric. And though the industry once tried to mold her into something she wasn't, Courtney has proven that the most powerful thing she can be is herself. What's perhaps most inspiring is how she's used her platform to speak about mental health and the pressures of growing up in the spotlight. She doesn't shy away from the hard truths, the loneliness, the self-doubt, the anxiety that comes with being constantly judged. "People see the lights and the applause," she said in a recent interview, "but they don't see the nights when you're sitting alone wondering if you're still good enough." Those words struck a chord with many young fans who feel the same kind of pressure in their own lives. In a world obsessed with perfection, Courtney's honesty is refreshing. She's no longer trying to live up to anyone's expectations, and in doing so, she's inspiring a generation to do the same. Beyond music, she's found balance in the simple things. Spending time with her family, writing songs in her bedroom studio, going for walks by the sea, the things that remind her of home. She's learned that happiness doesn't come from fame or fortune, but from peace of mind and self-acceptance. Her new songs tell that story beautifully. They're filled with themes of redemption, healing, and hope, messages that feel deeply personal yet universally relatable. Every lyric feels like a window into her soul, every melody a reflection of her growth. And though she may not be constantly in the headlines anymore, those who listen to her now can feel the difference. This is an artist who has found her voice again. Courtney's evolution isn't about reinvention, it's about rediscovery. She hasn't changed who she is. She simply peeled back the layers that fame built around her. What remains is a young woman with an old soul. Someone who still sings like she did the first time we saw her, with fire, emotion, and an honesty that can't be faked. When fans see her now, they don't just see a performer, they see a survivor. A girl who walked through the storm of fame, faced her demons and came out stronger. She tried to stay strong when the world seemed too heavy, and she succeeded. There's a quiet beauty in the way Courtney carries herself today. She's not bitter, not broken, just wiser. She knows that the music industry can take everything from you if you let it. But it can also give you purpose if you stay true to your heart. For Courtney Hadwin, the applause may have faded, but the impact has not. She reminds us that the bravest thing anyone can do, especially in a world that demands perfection, is to simply be real. Her story isn't a tragedy, it's a testament. To endurance, to growth, to finding strength in vulnerability, and to the power of a voice that refused to be silenced. In the end, Courtney didn't just survive the spotlight. She reclaimed it. And that might be her greatest performance of all.